What you're about to hear is not merely history. It's the very root of the problems facing the Cosmos ecosystem today. This isn't just a story about politics or tech. It's a story about ethics, morality, and a series of betrayals. It all started back in 2013 when I founded AIB and began working on an exchange called FDNOX. It was probably the first exchange designed to prove its reserves. But just as I was about to launch, I stumbled upon the 1988 BFT paper, and everything changed. Fast forward to 2015-2016, there is Cryptoeconomicon in the South Bay in California. I met Ethan Buckman and Chris Hart. 2016, I worked with Ethan as a lone employee since I wanted to build the EVM on top of Tendermint. And Eris wanted a permissioned EVM where Ethan worked, because I wanted to build the EVM on top of my creation. I taught Ethan everything I knew about Tendermint. He even wrote his thesis on it. But there was a problem. Eris Industries, co-founded by Casey and Preston Byrne, was being difficult about the software license. I spent 3 months trying to convince them to let me publish Tendermint as Apache 2, a standard open source license. Preston, despite being a lawyer, made it incredibly complicated. So I developed a BCI just so I could give up the EVM work I'd done and finally get the right to publish Tendermint with the license I wanted. During this time, I learned some unsettling things about our backer, Chris Arburn. He admitted to saving George Soros in Thailand during the IMF crisis, claimed to be XMI6, and had connections to political funding through jet fuel. I later discovered he was a lead funder for Brexit, a major funder of Ethereum, and had a significant role in Tether. The associations were concerning. Meanwhile, Ethan was helping with the test suit for Tendermint. To be clear, he didn't design it, but he did contribute there. I was struggling to raise money from Bitcoin-savvy VCs who just didn't get proof stake. As a last resort, I conceived of and wrote the Cosmos white paper, detailing my idea of embedding light client proofs directly into the blockchain. This was a concept I designed Tendermint for from the very beginning. I wrote almost the entire white paper, delegating only the non-technical parts to Ethan. I handled everything else, interfacing with law firms, creating the Interchain Foundation, designing the fundraiser. The entire technical and non-technical plan for Cosmos was my creation. The law firm, MME, said the foundation needed a 3-person board. They offered a neutral Swiss member, and I, being generous, invited Ethan as the third. I had already given him a huge chunk of equity in my company, AIB half of what I had, even though he joined years after I started it. I traveled the world pitching Cosmos until I couldn't stand another international flight. Ethan never did. After 4 years of non-stop work, I took a much-needed break in late 2017. When I returned, Ethan had hired a ton of managers. Okay, I thought, I can work with that. But by 2018, our professional relationship was falling apart. Ethan started pushing for me to leave the Interchain Foundation, or ICF, citing a conflict of interest. At an executive retreat, another key figure, Zaki Manian, made it clear he was only in it for the money. Then, at a conference, a controversial figure used my photo and that of Sunny to promote their project, Open Libra, without my consent. I warned Ethan and Zaki to stay away, but they didn't listen. While checking up on Open Libra, I comment about the voting system they're proposing, and I point out how it can easily be gamed, and they don't care. Things got worse. Zaki started calling himself a co-founder of Cosmos, even though he joined late and wasn't part of the core engineering team. I asked him to stop, but he didn't. Here were the engineers behind the hub software: Sunny Dev, Chris Goes, Ethan Frey, Alessio, Rigel, and myself. Neither Ethan nor Zaki were involved. Then there was Jessie Irwin. She bragged to me about getting revenge on her ex by gaining unauthorized access to his computer and taking his Bitcoin. She even showed me the purse she bought with it. When I told Zaki, he insisted we needed her. I reluctantly agreed, but refused to give her full superadmin proof. Zaki twisted this, spreading rumors that I was creating a glass ceiling and being discriminatory. This is the same person who told me his favorite book was about betrayal and that he saw himself as a god. I proposed a new project, Virgo, as a way to separate our roles. I would focus on new innovations, while Zaki and Ethan would handle the day-to-day management of AIB and the ICF. The plan was clear. By then, the ICF had over $100 million in its treasury. There was no financial issue. But suddenly, I heard engineers were worried about their job security. This made no sense. This funding was the ICF's responsibility, which Ethan and Zaki were managing. Inevitably, I was blamed. The engineers left, citing lack of funding, certainty, and other vague reasons in an open letter. Isn't it strange that this happened right after I started demanding transparent reporting on everyone's conflicts of interest? The smear campaign intensified. In our company's Slack, I once wrote that we should strive to do the work of God by writing excellent software. Just once. Zaki later resigned, publicly claiming I subjected everyone to religious harassment in every channel. A complete misrepresentation. Jesse Irwin then vaguely accused me of harassment at the peak of the Me Too movement. To this day, there is zero record of me ever harassing anyone. The culture was toxic. In Berlin, one developer got deeply offended when I suggested, in a private call, that we hire more concurrency experts. He couldn't stand the implication that he wasn't one. Ethan and Jack were involved in a skunkworks project in AIB named Abuldair, whereby they decided to talk amongst themselves about removing a key component of the entire project, Amino, instead of fixing IT because they did not want to. This was while I spent months brain-damaging Amino to be protobuf complete, because they insisted on supporting even after I fixed it up 99% of the way. They insisted on removing it. If you want to see what I mean, check out the difference between Amino then and the new Amino in Nolang's TM2 directory. Complete insanity, not to mention deceitful and illegal. Later, I learned Zaki was being sued for using the same unethical tactics on someone else. The person suing him told me Zaki had threatened him, saying, "Do you see what I did to Jay?" And it gets deeper. Ethan set up a new company, informal, with a massive financial incentive for himself, directly contradicting the public funding purpose of the ICF. Remember, I gave away half my company for the commons. This self-enrichment from foundation funds is highly questionable. It is illegal for FC members to enrich themselves this way, but apparently Swiss law is full of holes, just like their cheese. Later I find out that Jacob introduced Grace to Preston's law firm. I was told that Preston sold the idea that he would help resolve the lawsuit faster because he knows me. Preston disappears from the picture, and meanwhile their law firm makes ridiculous assertions such as they won't mediate until the lawsuit is dropped. This is ridiculous. Community is outraged. Then I discovered that Brian Crane, another board member, had also been an employee at Eris Industries, the very company that tried to undermine me in 2016. Had I known, I never would have allowed him on the board. When I left the foundation, I strongly warned against my replacement, stating they lacked the needed expertise. I suggested Sunny. They all completely dismiss my remarks and decide that it will be this person. Basically, it's hard not to see from my shoes that the project, or at least the ICF, was subverted by deep state forces. Why is Preston so often cited on Zero Hedge articles, like he's some paragon of truth? Who were the original 5 co-founders of Eris, and what are their backgrounds? Why was their mascot the marmot? Because they always planned on burrowing? Why did they rename from Eris to Monex? Maybe the connection to destruction is too obvious. Why do I keep seeing connections to elite establishment backgrounds? From an XMI6 backer to the son-in-law of a former dictator. They seem more interested in other projects like Ethereum and Urbit than in Cosmos. They should all disclose their conflicts of interest. But really, they should all just resign. This isn't just about drama. It's about poor strategic decisions that have harmed the network, like Proposal 69, Atom 2.0, and now the push to remove the 2/3 bonding target for an IBC hub, a core security feature. Ultimately, this was my mistake. After seeing what people like George Soros did to my home country, even caused my Daewoo to collapse where my dad held an executive position, I thought listening to Chris Harborn would be a good idea just because he was well connected. I should have not listened to him. I should not have created a Swiss foundation, or Trust MME, or a neutral board member. I should have fired Jesse on the spot. I should have fired Zaki. I should have said goodbye to Ethan. I should have fired Jack. I should have, but at every turn there appeared to be reasons why it would be a bad idea. Maybe if I give enough feedback or communicate with Ethan enough, maybe Ethan would see wrong. There are four types of people in this world. There are the entitled who grew up with silver spoons in a pot of evil. There are those who sell themselves to the above for mammon. There are those who grew up in poverty but got lucky, or was privileged and had the right upbringing, and feel a responsibility to reduce human suffering. There is everyone else who never received or never gave themselves the chance. Pick wisely, because the hour of judgment is upon us. Do not compromise on your values, and do not give people third and fourth chances. Do not feel intimidated by numbers and gang stalking, social_engineering tactics. There are some lines, like double dare or stealing, that are immediate grounds for exile. To this day, I have yet to hear a single apology. To be fair, Zaki once did internally to AIB, but not for what I wrote above. After I resigned from AIB by popular demand, though nobody sane would have agreed if they were in my shoes. And finally from ICF, because it was already clear that the ICF was completely subverted, though I still regret the decision. I have since been working on the best smart contracting system the world has yet even seen. It's still crazy to me that after Ethan and I decided that in order for us to make progress, we needed to create our own isolated budgets. So I finally agreed on the creation of Informal, while the Virgo budget was equally carved out for my direction. And just because I chose to keep the funds in the ICF obviously for accountability. Since I have resigned from the FC, they decided to completely ignore this and pretend like that arrangement never happened. Meanwhile, I have learned since that the coup Ethan created with Informal is not a coup at all, and Ethan has an outsized financial stake in it. So he is the one who has a conflict of interest, and he created it after. He pressured me to leave the ICF on the same grounds that I have the conflict. After I created all of these things, the magnitude of the hypocrisy and chicanery and deceit is what turned me Christian. Here is it what did it for me. The first letter and the last book of the Bible spoke to me like nobody else could at a time I most needed to hear it. Message to the church in Ephesus, Acts chapter 19, verse 8-12, 1 unto the angel of the church of Ephesus. These things saith he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. 2, I know thy works, and thy labor, and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil, and thou hast tried them which say they are apostles, and are not, and hast found them liars. 3, and hast borne, and hast patience, and for my name's sake hast labored, and hast not fainted. But nevertheless I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. 5, remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent, and do the first works. Or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will remove thy candlestick out of his place, except thou repent. 6, but this thou hast, that thou hatest the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. 7, he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Jesus is King of Kings. If you all just want to support the status quo despite these revelations, well, fuck me. Maybe it is simply too late. Don't be surprised if everyone decent starts to exodus to a new hub. I cannot in good conscience support what has been and now is worse. The fucking buck stops here. Trust me, it is better to sell and leave now if you don't agree with me. Don't say, I didn't warn you. Doing any kind of psychoanalysis of Cosmos without understanding the chicaneers in their works, and what really led to what they called Gore 2020, is complete folly, and only serves to sustain the status quo. Admitting the failures of the ICF and failing to act against the ICF, or suggesting that we simply ignore it when the hub should be taking action, is again being an apologist to evil. I have given them ample warning. Despite knowing that the above is true, they have continued to play their playbook of mass brainwashing cosmonauts, and continuing their attacks against the integrity of the hub, and turning the ICF into their slush fund, and then daring to ask for more with Adam too. Judgment Day is here. Here is the plan. Create an opposition political party that represents the original values of Cosmos. Make a new blockchain that counters the effects of the ICF Informal Stride political party. Play fire for fire to gather support around this new liquid staking hub. Oppose the status quo until they leave due to the governance stalemate on the main hub. Finding that, if they do not leave, develop our political party hub as the new Cosmos hub. Checkmate.